All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here are doing our 2025 preview and prediction for the Boston College Eagles. Look at this coaching staff remains intact from last year. Bill O'Brien's the head coach, Will Lawling as the offensive coordinator, then Tim Lewis as the defensive play caller. Below average offseason, 59th in the high school rank, 67th in terms of portal work. Pretty good year last season, 7-6, lost in the Pinstripe Bowl, though, in a very close game against Nebraska. Getting things started with this offense. This is a group that does return 7 starters. Grayson James ended up getting the starting nod at quarterback late in the year, and he's not going to be looking back. He was pretty solid over the final month of the season. Showcased nice touch across the middle into the boundary. The ability to scan the field and show calm feet in the pocket really stood out. 6'3", 226 has solid mobility. They also picked up Dalton and Nick from Alabama, reuniting him with Bill O'Brien, big armed passer. He was a 4-star recruit out of Georgia. I think he's a legit contender to start, especially if James doesn't play very well. So right now, this is the guy that's going to get the start because I thought he played very well at the end of the season, replacing Thomas Castellanos. But that, relationship there of Longerin is something of note. That could certainly lead to a lot of high upside for Boston College.
It is an intriguing quarterback room between James and Longerin here in Boston College. I think they do have two interesting prospects. I'll start with James, who I think will also be the starter. That's what I'm going to air with right now. 64% comp rate in his 166 attempts, which was more than what Castellanos had. I do want to note that. 1,200 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, and 2 picks, 1.2% interception ratio, and a 3.6% TD ratio. So I think those are solid stats. I think James was good when he played for this team in the second half of the season. I think he looked solid. He was decent in the Pinstripe Bowl and had some good moments altogether. Dylan Longerin, that's Bill O'Brien's guy. Bill O'Brien recruited him heavily out of high school when he was at Alabama. That was his guy. They had a really close personal relationship. They spent a lot of time together. He felt he was the future starting quarterback at Alabama. Obviously, a lot has changed with Nick Saban's retirement, Bill O'Brien leaving and ended up being at Boston College. So there's a lot of shuffling here. He ends up getting his guy out of the portal and bringing him to BC. I think he's the future option on Chestnut Hill, and he's going to be a phenomenal quarterback when he does start for this team. But right now, I think the incumbent, Grayson James, will get the start, will be the guy they roll with. I think James is a solid asset, so I'm not too worried about him under center. I think he'll be accurate. He'll get the job done early on.
And I think one thing that's certainly going to help them is this running back group. Nice returning duo with a second-year player in Turbo Richard, who had some impressively inefficient outings early in the year before getting hurt. Missed the last 5 games, but he had a touchdown in his return in the bowl game. Jordan McDonald, on the other hand, really took over in his absence. He had 4 straight 50-plus yard, 5-plus yard attempt games, including 133 yards in an upset win over Syracuse. Vaughn Pemberton comes over from Ball State. Only a few carries per year across 3 seasons. Alex Broom didn't play last year, but had some snaps back in 22 and 23. So I think this is an impressive room here. Really nice 1-2 punch in terms of McDonald and Richard. This offense was kind of strangely ran last year as Thomas Castellanos shined with his legs back in 23, and they didn't really give him an opportunity to run the ball last year, more so leaving that in the hands of the running backs. And they certainly thrive, though, 166 yards per game. I think they can continue to build upon that, but the quarterback run is certainly not going to be something that looks like it's going to be in the cards for this offense.
No quarterback run this year, so they're going to rely on the backs. It starts with Jordan McDonald, 361, 6.8 yards per carry, was pretty solid last year. 3 touchdowns were not bad either. You look at Turbo Richard, who I think was really good for this team as well. Richard, it's 278, 5.1, and 2 scores for him. So I think these are 2 guys, if they get a full body of work, they'll be solid. Last year, they only, each of them only had about just over 50 attempts. So if you can see those attempts double, I think they'll find a way to double their yards per, total at least, and they'll improve their yard per game total as well. They'll find a way to double those touchdowns. I think those are 2 really solid backs lead the way. Alex Broom, as well as a guy that, further down the depth chart that could be solid. Vaughn Pemberton came out of the portal as well from Ball State, although he is more of a depth piece. A graduate senior, though, so he has some experience in college football. This is not a bad running back room. I think they'll find a way to run the ball. They were successful at running the ball at times last year, 166 yards per game, 60th in the nation in that mark. So they'll find a way to be impressive on the ground, get into a groove there, and help out the quarterback.
Now you look at these pass-catching group. They returned 3 of the top 4 wide receivers from last year. Lewis Bond was the top one, worked out of the slot and out wide, commanded a lot of targets. Reed Harris, most of his production came in the final month of this season, but he averaged 28.5 yards per catch. Lots of big-time plays. A 6'2", 230. Should really see a big role this fall if he has that kind of ability in his game on a consistent basis. Jeremiah Franklin at tight end is the 3rd leading pass catcher. He and Kamari Morales both split snaps down the middle. It's going to be his tight end room now to himself. Also had very similar production as well, though. Had some really good games, again, splitting hairs right there. Jaden Skeet got hurt midway through the year. Had 3 45-plus yard games, though. VJ Wilkins comes over from Campbell. He had 2 straight 500-yard seasons at the FCS level and a combined 10 touchdowns. They also added Bryce Dobson from Kennesaw State, but barely saw the field. Solid room here, some good producers. I think Bond and Harris will be a really strong starting duo. I'm not mad at what they have here one bit, Nick. Maybe they could have some more depth, but I think this is a quality group nonetheless.
Yeah, depth is certainly a bit of an issue, but overall, I still think that headlining group is really solid. You start with Bond, just under 700 receiving last year. 10.3 yards per grab, though, is a little bit low for him. 3 touchdowns as well for him. Bond will be really solid this year. He's versatile. You can find a way to use him in a couple different ways. Reed Harris, almost 500 yards receiving, 28.6 yards per grab, a pretty solid number there. 4 touchdowns for him. He'll be a big deep play threat in this offense. Jeremiah Franklin, I think, is a really solid, steady tight end. 311 and 3 scores for him. He's not bad. And then Skeet as well, about 200 yards and a touchdown for him. He should find a way to get some more touches in this offense. I think Dobson could potentially come involved. He was a younger player when he transferred in. And then VJ Wilkins is a guy that's had some solid production in his career, a more veteran asset that they could use in a couple different ways, potentially in the slot as well. Definitely depth is a bit of an issue here. I think they probably should have gone to the portal and added 1 or 2 more pieces. But I like what they return in Harris and Bond, 2 very solid players to start things off here.
I move to the offensive line for the Eagles. They return both starters on the left side. They're both quite good in pass protection. Jude Bowery at left tackle, 6'5", 308 pounds, was nice as a sophomore. Logan Taylor, 6'7", 308, was good, just not as consistent. Center position goes to the portal. They add a 2-year starter and Tommy Matheson from Princeton. He was very good for them at 305 pounds. Amir Johnson from Merrimack, he was below average. At left tackle in his first year for them at BC. I think they're going to view him as a guard. Dwayne Alwick started back in 2022 at right guard, was solid, but saw reps at all 3 spots on the interior offensive line last year. It was horrid in pass pro. Likely going to get the nod, though, as the starter, I think, early in 2025. Right tackle is likely going to be a vet in Kelvin Klein, 6'7", 335, has over 300 snaps in his 4 years at BC. Jake Funk, a 4th-year guy, also in the fold. I think this will be a solid offensive line. They have some pretty good size, and I think their run game, again, they thrived last year, and I think they can improve behind these big, muscly players here for Boston College. What do you think's in store for them?
This is not a bad offensive line. I think Bowery's really solid at left tackle. Taylor's not bad at left guard. Matheson was an interesting add from Princeton. They've had some success with the O-line at the FCS level at the Ivy League school. Interesting add there. Amir Johnson could be really solid at right guard or left guard, depending on where they play him. Dwayne Alwick, he was good a couple years ago. A veteran leader, though, probably the most experienced guy, even if he's bounced around a lot in terms of position-based. And then Mick Lowe at right tackle or Jack Funk at right tackle. 2 key players there that can potentially play there. Maybe you play Amir Johnson there. That he's really versatile, the younger player coming over from Merrimack in the FCS level. This is not a bad offensive line. They'll be good in running the ball because this offensive line will be solid in run protection. I'm curious how they'll perform in pass block, but I think run block they'll be really solid. A steady, middle-of-the-road unit in this conference. I have no issues here, but they're not blowing me off the page either. Returning enough starters to be confident in this offensive line, though. A decent unit here.
Looking at the offensive verdict for the Eagles, this offense is set for improvement as they will likely have a balanced attack of a good run game and a passing attack that should elevate with James now a passer with some veterans to throw to, an offensive line that's going to offer quality blocking and drop back. Solid group here. I think they should improve in all areas. I'm still only going to give them a C+. Maybe that's a little bit harsh. I think they could probably potentially be a B-. I'm not sure, Nick. Maybe I'm being a little bit too disrespectful because most of the things I said about this unit are positive, but I'm still going to go for a bit of a low grade.
Yeah, I think a C+ is fair. Maybe a B- if you really want to start thinking about that, because they do return 7 stars, which I think is really nice. Grayson James showed me some solid promise at starting quarterback. Richard coming back is really good at running back. I think Bond and Harris are 2 good leaders at wide receiver, while bringing in Wilkins from the portal was not a bad add. Plus, Franklin at tight end is a big physical asset who will be solid. The O-line has some solid pieces as well that are a mix of veterans, a mix of some guys from the portal that could be really solid here. This offense may surprise people. 28.2 points per game last year wasn't a horrible number. I don't know if they'll get close to 30 this year, but I think they'll certainly be around that 28 mark again this year. A good enough unit. I think Bill O'Brien has himself a decent offense here, just like he did last year.
I move to the defensive side of the ball for Boston College. This is a group that, I think for the most part was quite respectable last year. They certainly did have their weaknesses, but they were really great against the run. Biggest thing for them is they had a superstar in Denovan Azaraku coming off the edge, who we knew about for years, Nick, so we weren't shocked last year when he won Conference Player of the Year. 20.5 TFL is what he had, and the team had 68, so he had a giant chunk of that. He was pretty much their entire pass rush as well. Over half the sacks they had last year came from one man. So I think that it's going to be hard to replace that production, of course, but they're going to certainly give it their best attempt. You look at a guy in Contavious Hutchins, saw 400-plus snaps last year. He was average against the run, but he did have 3.5 sacks, so was a solid player for them. Edwin Collingy only saw about 70 reps and had only 1 tackle. He's a 248-pounder from Canada. Josiah Griffin saw even less reps in only 3 games. Favor Bate comes over from Merrimack, played 125 snaps in his debut season. Anye Nwasisi was a great 2-year starter for Valpo and was really, good against the run. Owen Stoudemeyer was a pretty solid run defender, posting 30-plus tackles in the hole at only 6'1", 284. Sandarius McConnell returns after also seeing extensive action of 300-plus snaps. He was below average, also about 280 pounds. Quan Williams got on the field for 150-plus reps, was solid in his action. Finally gives them some more size at 308 pounds. You also have Ty Clemens. He got on the field a bit. He's only pushing about 273. This isn't a great defensive line. Chuck Nieto from Elon comes over, a tremendous run defender. I don't think this is the worst defensive line in the world. I think they got some solid depth, but the interior really, it's just a lack of overwhelming size. They don't have much of it one bit, and I know the ACC is not the most physical conference in the world, Nick, but at some point you're going to have to muscle up because there is some really good rushing attacks. With the limited size, no Ezeraku, I think step back is in their future up front.
Yeah, step back is probably coming for this defensive line unit. They were good against the run last year. 22nd in the nation, under 115 yards per game is a pretty impressive number. A lot of that does rely on Ezeraku, who was absolutely phenomenal. He was about a third of the sacks and tackles for loss last year. He was just an absolute beast. There's a reason why he got drafted early in the NFL draft, a guy that's going to certainly be a freak of nature in the NFL, a guy that I really liked at this BC program. So it's tough to replace him. I think, Hutchins is a good start, right? 31 total tackles, 6 sacks lost, 3.5 sacks, a pick, 2 pass breakups. He should see himself improve a lot this year. I think Hutchins will come off the edge and be a good asset. Stoudemeyer, 30 total tackles, 4 tackles lost, 2.5 sacks. He was not bad for this team. Said McConnell, 14 total tackles, a tackle for loss last year. But outside of that, it's a lot of guys who didn't have as many meaningful snaps. I'd look at some of the other names there. Edwin Collingy, the guy from Montreal, Quebec. He's going to try and get a starting role on that right side. Want to see what he can do. Josiah Griffin's hopefully going to try and fight for that position as well. Ty Clemens is not a terrible player, a guy on the roster. Quan Williams hoping to find a way at nose tackle to get on the field, but there's definitely a lack of meaningful production returning on this defensive line, which probably has to concern you if you're a BC fan, because it's going to be tough to find a way to replace those sacks and tackles for loss from Ezeraku.
Now you look at the middle of this defense, Davion Crouch. He was the top linebacker on this defense, being quality versus the run, pretty respectable in coverage. Did a little bit of everything for the Eagles. Owen McGowan was good in his 250-plus reps, got 2 late starts late in the season, of course, but battled health most of the year. He was a nicely efficient player when he got on the field. Jalen Blackwell missed last season, but saw 100-plus snaps in 22 and in 23, but he didn't offer much. Bryce Steele was a starter back in 22, but he was pretty awful. He's barely played since then, and a veteran in Juan Zabel who hasn't played at all. So this is not the greatest group. I think if healthy, they got a nice starting duo, but that's about it. Not that high on this group one bit. Hopefully Crouch, though, can really elevate them. This was a group that was a bit of a strength for them last year, but for 2025, the outlook is a little bit more gloomy.
Definitely a weaker unit on this team and a weaker unit overall in the conference. Crouch, 77 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 4 pass breakups. He was solid last year, also had 2 forced fumbles. He'll be a big leader, the quarterback of the defense. McGowan, when he gets a full-time role, he should see himself improve a little bit. 28 total tackles, a tackle for loss, and 2 pass breakups last year. But outside of that, the depth is kind of weak here, not a whole lot of experience. Bryce Steele, they're hoping that maybe he could be a solid asset. Jalen Blackwell, same story. But overall, not a great unit here. Definitely weak, a little bit of a concerning unit.
I moved to the secondary for Boston College. They returned the starting corner, Max Tucker. He was above average. Will need to create more ball production, but he was a good player altogether. Amari Jackson was a starter in 2023 and last year before getting hurt. Well, solid in coverage all around, so this is a good duo. Not exactly great, but they can be pretty solid with, I think, improved consistency. Ashton McShane filled in as the starter in relief for Jackson. He ended up giving up 300-plus yards on 24 grabs, but played as good as you could have asked for a true freshman. Cameron Martinez returns to the slot. He was pretty awful, though. The only competition appears to be from a redshirt freshman in Charlie Camella. Safety group headlined by Carter Davis, who was great as a redshirt freshman of his coverage play, being 4th on the team in tackles, but was horrid against the run. KP Price, on the other hand, was a great veteran that was even more impactful as the leading tackler. He was incredibly stout in coverage. Wasn't as good in the run defense area, but a great duo here. Should improve in those areas, I think, over time. Omar Thornton played 250-plus snaps in 8 games. He was quite poor, was able to get on the field as a true freshman. I think this is a pretty good secondary here. They snagged 17 picks last year. They got vets at corner I think is going to play well. Safety tandem that should stay stout in coverage. If we can coach these guys when it comes to the run fits and get improved play out of the slot, I think that, they can be really good in the back end, Nick. So I know I was pretty critical of the D-line linebacker group. Secondary, though, I'm pretty happy with, and I think that 110th in the nation ranking will come down.
Yeah, I think it will certainly come down. I think they'll find a way to improve. Giving up almost 250 yards per game last year through the air was not a good number, but I think the stats were a little deceiving. They were solid at getting interceptions, 17, like you said, and I think some of the production they returned, which is really solid here. KP Price was the top tackler on this team last year, 85 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, 2 picks, 5 pass breakups. He's really solid for this team. Carter Davis, 52 total tackles, a tackle for loss, 3 picks, 3 pass breakups. He's a decent asset. Max Tucker, 30 total tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 picks, 2 pass breakups for him. Cameron Martinez, Omar Thornton, both had 29 total tackles. Thornton was solid, 4 tackles for loss for him as well, a pick for Martinez. And then Amari Jackson, he was good before he got hurt, 21 total tackles, 5 pass breakups. While Ash McShane, I thought I saw some progress in the younger player, 20 total tackles, 4 pass breakups, and a tackle for loss for him. I'm happy with the secondary. I think they'll certainly find a way to improve that number. I don't think it's the massive weakness that it was last year at times. I think it's definitely the best part of this defense and is a unit that will continue to improve. I like the mix of veterans and younger players here. Maybe the safety group's a little bit weaker, but I think Davis will be solid this year, and KP Price is a really good, sound tackler who will probably lead the team in tackles again.
Looking at the verdict for this defense, BC was a quality group in 2024. I think they will be this upcoming season as they have depth up front and a really impressive secondary and key veterans in the middle. And, of course, I think they're well coached, from top to bottom. Losing one of the best defenders in the country, though, is most definitely going to be felt. In the pass rush will likely struggle, and the lack of size is alarming when it comes to stopping higher-end run games. I like this defense. I think slight regression is expected, but it should be better when it comes to fundamentals and their ability to play, defense in the secondary. I think there's things they can improve on. But overall, Nick, Izaraku's departure, they're just not going to be able to overcome this one bit.
It's hard to say that one player leaving will fully impact the team, but I think in this situation, Izaraku leaving is a massive impact and will really damage your team. He was phenomenal against the run and putting pressure on the quarterback last year. He's gone. That's a problem for BC. I think the pass rush will be significantly weaker. The interior defensive line is not a very strong unit. The secondary will take a lot of steps forward, and I like the pieces they have, but I also think the linebacking core is not that strong, and there's some issues there potentially as well. Overall, I think this defense has some good pieces, and the secondary has some decent pieces in general, but I just don't think they're going to be that much better because they're losing such a talented piece. They will take a little bit of a step back here. They will not be as strong as a unit against the run, although they will improve against the pass, so maybe that will balance things out.
The loss of Cam Horsley, Cam Arnold, also pretty tremendous losses, so I think this defense, B- for me. I think they do have potential to be good. 2025 schedule and the final prediction for BC is going to be 5-7 for me. The Eagles were a pretty tough team last year as they were in every single game they lost and even took SMU to the deep end in a very crucial game for the conference before coming up short. I think this team improves as they upgraded at quarterback to have a more balanced offense with a good run game and some solid pass catchers, while the defense will play good ball led by a talented secondary. Don't have the talent, depth, or size to compete for the conference, but I like this veteran old school coaching staff. And, a daunting stretch, though, 4 out of 5 home games that could be very tough for their opponent. Don't be shocked if they sink someone. I think Georgia Tech, they'll beat them late in the year. Notre Dame, SMU, Clemson, all these teams got to come here, Nick, and I think they're going to be challenging games. As, again, you look at last year's results, they were not that bad of a team one bit. Again, in every single game, the tougher opponents, including Syracuse, who they beat in a shootout, which was obviously a phenomenal offense. 5-7 for me. I know you're going to 4-8. The schedule really is rough, so it's really hard to argue with your prediction. But I think this team can accomplish a lot more than what we're giving them.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4-8 for this team because the schedule is just very difficult here. I think when you look at a trip to Michigan State on September 6th, that's not going to be necessarily easy. It's a Michigan State team that should improve. I think they'll lose to Georgia Tech. That's the one loss I have them in addition to the other losses on the season. I think Georgia Tech's just a better team overall. But they play 4 really good teams at home in Clemson, Notre Dame, SMU, and Georgia Tech. It would not shock me at all if they shock and upset one of those teams. This is a team that I like some of the pieces on offense. I like some of the pieces on defense. I think the long-term outlook in Chestnut Hill is quite positive for BC. I think Bill O'Brien's not the worst coach for this type of school. I don't think he was the right fit at coordinator at Alabama, but I think in a more low-key, lower stress environment in an area in the country where he's coached before, he has some experience being up in the New England area. He's a guy that could find a way to get something out of recruits and bring some talent in from the New England area and could be a solid coach here. I think it's a tough season for BC fans. I think it's not exactly what they want, but overall I think they're heading in the right direction. I think they'll get some nice wins over the two California teams, Stanford and Cal. I think that's a good way, and it's too tough for Cal to come to the East Coast and win that game in Stanford. It's just a dumpster fire right now. They'll beat UConn, who are just down the road, and what is a rivalry game. Those two fan bases do not like each other, even though UConn is a decent team this year on paper. Tough year for Boston College, but I do think the future is trending in the right direction for this ACC program that did play in a bowl game last year. 4-8 for me this year. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what they can do under center and see what the defense can do.
That's going to be it for this episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.